So let us start today's session around tracking your impact. Hari, could you please go to the next slide? Yeah, the next one. I guess it's not changing. Yeah, it is there. So, okay, before we kickstart the session, let me quickly introduce you to what impact is. We all keep on talking about impact, but what actually impact is. So, impact is basically a change in your outcome, and it can be positive or negative, intended or unintended. When we say it is a change in an outcome, let me explain it to you through an example. Like people have been doing farming from ages, and the outcome of that is they get their livelihood, they get their food security. So there is definitely an outcome associated with an intervention. But once a startup or an enterprise comes into action, so in this outcome, what change they have increased the productivity of the land, they have doubled the income of the farmers, they have enhanced their food security by bringing in more climate resilient crops. So this is a change that is there in the outcome. So impact is a change in an outcome caused by an organization. Now, before we go to what is impact management, I would like to also quickly explain what is an outcome. So outcome is a qualitative term, and it is a level of well-being experienced by a group of people, your customers, the condition of the natural environment as a result of an event or an action. So now once you know your impact and your outcome, so impact management would be easy to understand. It is a process of identifying the positive and negative impacts that an enterprise has on the people and the environment. And once you know the positive and the negatives, you have to work for reducing the negative outcome and enhancing the positive outcome. So this is impact management, knowing your intended and unintended outcomes, and then working on reducing the unintended ones and enhancing the intended ones. And now I would like to invite my colleague Amanda, before we kickstart the session, to share with you some insightful slides, and then we can take the session forward. Hari,
perfect.
Please go to the next slide.
Perfect. So I want to ask everybody here, you've got to buy some chairs for your house. I'm giving you a couple of options of chairs. You've been shopping all over, and you found the perfect chair. This is it. One store is selling it for $400, and the other one is selling this chair for $700. And I asked folks earlier in the chat box today to put down which one they would buy. So if people can open their chat box and put A or B. These are nice chairs. They're made of teak. Both of them are made of teak, and they both are going to be looking great on your back porch. So I wonder if people can open that chat box and say if they would prefer to buy A or B. And yeah, I'm seeing some people are looking to save some money. And I think then I would like to say, we'd like to learn a little bit more about these chairs. So Hari, can we go to the next slide? So we learned that chair A, which cost $400, is actually made of teak wood that is dragged out of natural forests. You know, in a maybe what could be considered a traditional way, not really sustainable way. Whereas chair B is perhaps used and grown from teak wood that might be on a sustainable plantation that's already been on deforested land, which is now perhaps becoming an agroforestry system. So the teak might be just adding to the land while the farmers continue to produce ways that they must have already done. So if you had the opportunity to know the difference between chair A or chair B, one might at this point at least consider spending an additional amount of money. And the analogy that we see to your companies is that every single one of you is here has a great story like chair B. And even the thing with many of you is that you're not even competing on price. Many of you for the substitutes that you're creating or for the products you're creating are at the same price or even cheaper. But people need to understand that story of impact in order to strengthen their reasoning for going with you. And if you give them the right kind of story, if they believe your story kind of based on the different impact numbers you might be sharing with them on the website, on the label of your product, or in your marketing or your pitches, then they're even likely to share that with other people. So I want to go to the next slide. That's just saying it's our job as business owners to tell that story. So if you don't know it, if you don't have it in easy to tell version, no one might know it. So let's learn how we can do that in the best way possible for your businesses today. Next slide. One important concept we want you to take away is the before and after. This is just to shock you, to jar you. If you just see someone with a normal smile, you won't even think anything. Oh, that guy has some nice teeth, that very last picture there. But if you've seen the journey that he's taken, you might understand that there was a lot of skill that went involved in that. And you might even think, I know someone who can benefit from this kind of a procedure. So next. The importance is to show the before and after. And now we're just taking it back home with a little bit of before and after photos of a landscape. We don't know, it's so easy to forget where we came from. So as a business owner, it is important to understand somehow to take that snapshot. Maybe it's from neighboring communities, or maybe you remember what was going on in those communities, or you can ask your farmers, but to get that snapshot of what their life looked like, what their income looked like, what their land was doing, so that you can then show that progression and make that story about the change your business continues to make in their lives. Next. Just some more landscape pictures. Some of you will have pictures that will be as dramatic as this. Next page. Okay, I think this might go back to Kavita.
Thank you, Amanda. So now once we have the basic information around what is impact, what is outcome, and what is impact management, let me quickly introduce you to the 5 core dimensions of impact. These are what, who, how much, contribution, and risk. So one by one, I'll give you a brief idea around each of them. Next slide. So the first one, the what dimension tells us what outcome the enterprise is contributing to, whether it is positive or negative, and how important the outcome is to the stakeholders experiencing it. So whether it maps to the sustainable development goals and associated targets, or it meets the needs of the stakeholders. So it is all about knowing your outcomes, positives and negatives, and how it helps you make a strategy is like, by considering all your outcomes, you are able to prioritize those outcomes that matter the most to the stakeholders, experiencing them, and put policies and safeguards in place to identify and mitigate the negative outcomes. So knowing all your outcomes and what your enterprise is contributing to is extremely important in making your strategy around impact management. Next, we go to the next slide. Yeah. So next we have who. This who category is very important because it tells us which stakeholders are experiencing the outcome, and how underserved they are in relation to an outcome. So the data category under the who dimension helps enterprises identify the stakeholders they affect and understand how underserved they are in relation to the social or economic or environment in which they operate. So the basic premise behind the who categories is simple. If you have limited resources to allocate towards creating an impact, to whom would you direct those resources to? The underserved stakeholder or to a larger group that is well served? So the impact data categories under the who dimension help the enterprises segment their stakeholders based on who is likely to benefit the most. Next slide. Now, next one is how much. So how much tells us how many stakeholders experience the outcome, to what degree they experience the change, and for how much duration they experience that outcome. So the how much dimension covers the extent of the impact across scale, depth, and duration. So scale refers to the number of people experiencing the outcome. Depth, it refers to the degree of change in the outcome level experienced by them. And duration is the time period, of course, for which the stakeholder experienced the outcome. For example, knowing the number of people reached is only just one part of the equation. To fully understand the extent of impact experienced by stakeholders, enterprises, and investors need to consider all the three data categories. Next slide. Now coming to contribution. So contribution tells us whether an enterprise and or investors' efforts resulted in outcomes that were likely better than what would have occurred otherwise. Suppose if your enterprise would not have existed, what changes would have been there, or what contribution your enterprise has made once you came into existence. So to understand their own contribution to a social or environmental outcome, enterprises need to consider what likely would have happened in the absence of their activities. The data categories in the contribution dimension, they help the enterprises and the investors assess an enterprise contribution to the environment. So this is a very important category. And one more important thing is that investors as well as the enterprises, like startups like you, they operate in a very dynamic environment. Suppose if you are having one technology around irrigation, then it is possible that the government sector, other actors like NGOs, private companies, they are also offering a similar kind of solution. So what contribution your solution has in this bigger dynamic social ecosystem, that is important to note. If you consider like your contribution is significant, you need to increase your efforts in that direction. If you feel like your contribution is insignificant, you need to revise your strategy. So this is a very important pillar of the impact management strategy. Next slide. Now we have certain impact risks associated with any enterprise. And let me tell you, they are different from the financial risk. So what risk is? It is basically the likelihood that impact will be different than the expected, and that the difference will be material from the perspective of people and the planet who experience the impact. So we have different kind of risk under the impact category, like the evidence risk, external risk, drop-off risk, stakeholder participation risk, and 4 to 5 other risks. So in total, there are 9 different risks under the impact category, which are different from the financial risks. And identifying as well as assessing and mitigating risks is not a one-time exercise, but an ongoing learning process that requires re-evaluating the risk. And it makes one of the core component of your impact management strategy. Next slide. So now when we know what is impact, what is outcome, what is impact management, and what are the different core dimensions of impact, let us come to why measure impact. Next slide. So yeah, here it is. Impact is at the core of what you do. Ultimately, you communicate the success of your business intervention in terms of the impact that you are creating. And when I say impact, I don't keep revenue apart from the impact. Of course, financial impact is a category under your broader impact. And whenever you are pitching to impact investors, they want to fulfill their dreams around creating an impact through your venture. So you have to be very precise around knowing your impact. As I said, positive, intended, unintended, negative. You have to know all your outcomes, and then you have to communicate your impact based upon your positive outcomes. And also impact defines your core value. So what are you trying to address? Is protecting the planet and reaching out to people to create a well-being is the core value that you associate yourself with, or is just generating profitable business is your core value? So it communicates a lot around your value proposition as well. Then it also helps you create transparency in the market. If you are able to clearly demarcate the value proposition of your product, like it is sustainable, it is eco-friendly, it doesn't you have transparency around the pricing of the product, to which segment the money is going, that you are earning, how you are supporting other environment or well-being related initiatives. So that helps you in creating a transparency. And of course, last but not the least, it helps you get the impact investment. So communicating your impact clearly is very much essential. Next slide. Yeah. So coming to the baseline, why it is important? Because as we start growing and building further and taking our venture forward, we quickly forget from where we have come, like the landscapes which Amanda has shown. So memorizing where from you have come, what is the baseline or the actual ground from where you have started, and showing the progress in a certain timeline from that initial period to a current period, that is very much important, and it shows how much you have progressed from your baseline. Next slide. So identify what and how to measure. So when you want to measure certain outcome or an impact, you should know what you have to measure. Next slide. Now, here we come to the key performance indicators, the KPIs. These indicators which guide you around planning your strategy and measuring certain impact parameters. So it's a type of measure that is used to evaluate the performance of an organization. And it is not easy to frame these indicators. There are limitations, there are challenges, sometimes around finding the right methodology behind designing an indicator, sometimes reaching out to the right kind of a stakeholders, sometimes it is the financial constraint, and sometimes it is the timeline. The timeline also matters the most. So now we are going to share with you some of the key guiding indicators, and based upon your business venture, you should be able to identify which ones are relevant to you. And this is a broader suggestive category of KPIs. You know your business very well. You know what are your intended outcomes. You know what you have to showcase to the community, the positive impact that you are creating, and what should be the minute details that should come out through these indicators is an exercise that you have to start now if you haven't yet started designing your KPIs. Next slide. So KPIs can be different. It can be around environmental KPIs, socioeconomic KPIs, financial KPIs, and related to your business process. As I said, you know how your business is designed. So you are the most suitable person to decide around what kind of KPIs you should have to measure your impact. Next slide. So when we come to environmental KPIs, as most of you are already impacting the environment through your interventions, you should be able to narrow down on some of the key interventions or the outcomes that your business is creating. And as per that outcome, suppose it is afforestation or carbon reduction or water consumption or biodiversity enhancement or energy consumption, you have to identify some key impact, and then you have to narrow it down to your indicators. Like if it is afforestation, then trees planted per year or acres or hectares restored so far, or acres of virgin forest land protected or conserved. If it is around carbon reduction, then it should be specific around how much is the percentage change in the soil carbon, how much carbon you have been able to sequester, how much carbon you plan to sequester. And if you remember when we had a session with Looney, so he suggested that if you don't have impact numbers on your slide, it is good to show the KPIs that you are at least on the track to measure these impact, and you have certain strategy in place, you will be able to document your impact in the years to come. But at least your audiences and relevant stakeholders should be able to know that you have defined your path to measure your impact and you have identified your KPIs. Next slide. So now coming to socio-economic KPIs, just saying that increasing livelihoods, participation of women, and other things have gone up is not sufficient. When you say that you have created job, you have provided them sustainable livelihood opportunities, you need to do a deep dive and design some particular KPIs to measure that impact, like percentage of women employed. It can be in different forms, in percentage or in some comparative data, not the actual numbers. You have different ways to design your KPIs, but there should be some comparable, what I should say, variable in place that you are able to show to the stakeholders. So then type of skill imparted, you cannot just say that sustainable livelihood. What kind of activity you are providing them for sustainable livelihood? Is it value addition? Is it processing? Is it marketing? Or what part of supply chain you are trying to improve? So once you are able to narrow down to some broader impact, the intended and positive impact that you are creating, you should do a deep dive to design indicators to measure that KPI. Next slide. Now coming to the financial KPIs or the traction. So during most of the presentations, what we observe is that either the slide around your revenue or your projections, it is missing or it doesn't give a clear picture. So when you have all the data in place, and even if you are at an early stage and you are not incurring revenues, at least you should be able to show your trajectory, your plan around how you you should be able to show a forecast around your planned revenues, the pipeline of revenues, if it is there. And you should be able to design a particular timeline for yourself, like if you want to show it for an year or for a period of 5 years, if you have more clarity around your business. But it should be there, and it should be clear that you have identified the KPIs and you know where you want to take your business to. Next slide. Yeah, so these are some of the KPIs related to your business process. KPIs are not always related to the environment or the socioeconomic progress, like we said. So you can have some indicators also around to measure how you are doing in your R&D and the manufacturing. Like I should be able to finish these many pieces in this quarter. Then sales and marketing also, you should be able to define some KPIs, whether you are done with your intellectual property, whether you are able to secure your intellectual property, or if you are planning to go into certain geography, you should be able to narrow it down. Like in the first quarter, we are expanding to this district in this city or so and so state. So everything should be clear, and it should be on your radar that you have identified certain things as your positive and intended outcomes, your impact, and now you have certain details around which you have defined how you will be measuring those impact parameters. Next slide. Yeah, so I would like to pass on to Amanda now to communicate you through some visuals around how we should prioritize our showcasing the KPIs.
Okay, sure, perfect. So Kavita, thanks so much for that. So wanted to again bring everybody back to the purpose of this is pretty soon. Maybe we didn't tell you, but you'll actually be creating during this session today a draft of an impact evaluation plan for your company. So we do want to provide a few tools that you can look at as well. So this tool is from a publication that WRI has created called The Road to Restoration, which many people here are restoring land in one way or another. And this starts to show you the many different ways that land can be restored. Because maybe, you know, at first glance, you're thinking, maybe I don't restore land, or maybe I do. It doesn't matter if you do or not. You know, it does, because that's what this accelerator is about, but it matters that you make a positive change. So this wheel is just helping you see different areas that you might be making a change, and then you can actually find where you are. So you can, you know, we're going to share, of course, this slide deck afterwards, as we always do. You can check out the publication online, but this wheel you can even see as a tool where you can actually, you know, maybe take a screenshot of it and start to circle the areas where your business is actually making a difference for your community. And then on the next slide, we'll go to the next slide. We really start to break down where you can start to find metrics and indicators. And this is something that we'll be doing in a second via a Google form. So you might have identified, I think a lot of you might have identified that you are helping the community through increased income. You also might have identified you're helping it through increased yield, which is the light green underneath it. Maybe you're also helping climate mitigation, perhaps because you're bringing additional crops to the land, which of course would help, or maybe adaptation, I mean, but you're helping in some way. And then, you know, you go over to the right and you can start to see what are some of those indicators, because maybe, you know, this is just going to give you a new way of thinking. So if you're helping with adaptation through, let's say, increased biodiversity, what you're actually doing is helping reduce the stress of shocks and reduce the impact of shocks and stresses. So for instance, we're talking about all the flooding that's happening up in Assam that happened way out of time. Maybe if there was an agroforestry system that your company put in place, the impacts would not be as strong. That's actually what we've seen from some of our companies who've been launching agroforestry food forests throughout India. So it's just an example. And, you know, then you can see some example metrics here. So this is all just sample frameworks to get you in the state of mind. And so that's what we're working on today. And this book goes through a lot of that. So anybody who wants to look at anything more in detail can have a look. But let's go to the next slide. And I think we want to emphasize here that there were a lot of KPIs, and you don't have to do them all. You might have to you might want to focus on them. So this is where you get a chance to try out yourself. So we're going to put in the chat box this link, which I actually just linked to right now. And so there's actually 3 pages to this form. So go ahead and check the chat box. It's going to take you to a Google form where it's asking you to take a look at these different KPIs that maybe our team has identified that might be relevant to some of your business models. And you'll see, go ahead and click on it now. You can navigate away from this this Zoom call and take a look at the Google form. You can listen to my voice while you're doing that. You'll see that there's a few options for each key performance indicator we put there, whether you're already tracking it, whether you wish to track it, or maybe it's not applicable, or maybe it's not a priority for you to track. And so we just ask you to consider all of those for a few moments. And basically, I think it's the same. I want them to go to the one I put, Kavita, because it automatically emails them the responses. I think it's the same. Did you change it?
No.
Okay, I think it's the same. So just to be sure, because I think the one I put in was just the shortened form. So I think it's going to take you to the same thing, whether you look at the one Kavita put in there or not. I literally just copied the link from this PowerPoint presentation, and it worked out for me. So you're going to get a copy of this when we finish the presentation today. So we're only asking you to do the first page right now. And let's see. I believe everybody's had the chance to open it up.
And Amanda, I would like to explain it to the cohort. Like this form has 3 sections. So it is addressing to what we are sharing you over the presentation. Like whatever we have told you so far, it is there on the first page of the form. When you are going to submit it, you will get to the second part of the form, which we are going to cover next in our slides. So even if you want to take your time and do the form towards the end of the session, that is also going to be fine. Maybe Amanda, we can continue with our slides. You're on mute, Amanda.
Correct. Yeah, correct. Let's continue. Next slide, please. What do we have next? Oh, yes. prioritizing your KPIs. Of course, there's so many KPIs you can have. Kavita, would you like to present on this?
Yeah, sure. Thanks,
Okay.
Amanda. So once we know that we should have certain KPIs in place, now how should you design the KPIs and what should they focus at? So they should be specific, they should be measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound. I think the terms themselves are self-explanatory. So you just need to make your KPIs around this SMART connotation. So that they are very much specific to what you want to tell to the stakeholders. Next slide. Yes, now coming to the SDGs, when we talk about the impact, we of course have to relate our environmental and social impact to the larger climate and social goals that we are committed to. Based upon where we are staying, if we have certain goals at the subnational level, at the state level, you should be able to relate to those. If you are based out of Maharashtra, you have a state policy around your environment or around your social goals that your venture is addressing, then you should be able to align to those goals at the national or the subnational or the international level. So SDGs, you should never forget any of the larger climate goals that your country, your state has declared. You should be able to find some goals where your venture is contributing to. Next slide. So now we have an impact template in place. Archana is here, so I would like to share that, like when Archana was presenting to the external mentor on the one-on-one call, she got one feedback from Caspian Impact Advisors that you should be able to measure your impact at least through a basic template, from the baseline. And therefore, we are going to share with you this impact template. The link to it is there in the chat box. I'm going to post it in the chat box, and let me just quickly introduce you to this template.
Kavita, I have it if you don't. I can do it if you don't have it.
Yeah,
right
please
already.
go
Okay,
ahead.
perfect. There's the impact template for you. You can probably save a copy of this into your own Google form, into your own Google Drive, and that will be a great way for you to use this. We've really seen success. I think Kavita can speak to that a little bit more of folks who've used
Hari,
this.
if you are able to click at the link and reach out to the template, I'll quickly explain it to the cohort.
Okay, thank you. Can you see the screen?
No, I think you'll have to reshare your screen. Hari.
Yeah, I'm doing it.
In the meantime, I see Radishi with his hand up. Should we take a quick question?
Yes, sure.
Yes. So actually, Aritra Bhaumek, my former mentor, so he had also explained me about this concept to measure KPIs using the Iris Plus matrices, which has been designed by the Global Impact Investment Network. So whether that could be, definitely there is a standard procedure that you all have, but can we also use them in conjunction with this?
Of course, there are numerous impact templates. This is just one suggestive template. If you are not using anyone as of now, you can look to this template and you can design your own template. This is just a suggestive one.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
Hari, could you scroll it down?
Okay.
So there are different impact data categories under this template. A little bit down. Yes, so the dimensions that we have explained to you, the 5 core dimensions, they are mentioned here. Then there is impact category that talks about the outcome level. What you can look at the different impact categories under each dimension once you are able to open it in your own systems. So then there is definition that explains about this impact category. And Hari, if you can scroll a little bit towards right side, that shows the indicator. Can you scroll it a bit up? Yes. Now you can fill in your own indicators here, the data that you have for that indicator, the source from where you have collected the data, and what is your assessment. Is it after doing a final analysis of that indicator, is it a positive or intended outcome, or is it a negative outcome? Once you are able to identify it, you are 80% done around your impact measurement. You know on which core KPIs you should focus that are leading to positive outcomes, and which you should minimize that are the negative outcomes. Because these are inbuilt part of any intervention. Whenever you are going to create any impact, there is always going to be certain unintended impact also. Would like to quote one example. I think Rohit is here from lakadwala.com. Rohit, I hope you don't mind me quoting this example, but Rohit shared with us yesterday that while creating a positive impact around creating a transparent value chain for timber, what he has observed over the years is that there is a negative unintended outcome that has resulted. What it is, the investors and the stakeholders have started to develop this perception that he is encouraging deforestation in certain ways. And now he has to deal with the investor perception management. So while creating a positive outcome for improvising the timber supply chain, which is still very much fragmented and non-transparent in the country, one unintended outcome has come that he's promoting deforestation. So this is just one example where you need to identify what can be the possible negative or unintended outcomes. And once you have enlisted those outcomes, you need to work on minimizing them. Hari, you can stop sharing this template and we can go back to the presentation.
Okay.
Rohit, would you like to comment? Have I been able to explain it properly?
Yes, it's fine. This is a big problem for us. So.
Thank you, Rohit. And this might be a situation with any one of you. So you just need to work around identifying your positive intended and negative unintended outcomes. Next slide. Now it is the third action item in the agenda. Create your baseline and monitor regularly. So that we have shown you, it is a suggestive template that we shared with you. Once you start filling it out, you feel comfortable around designing your own category. Like all the 5 categories, you may not be able to identify immediately, but once you start doing a deep dive around what are your different dimensions of impact, you will certainly be able to narrow it down to your KPIs, the data that you have, the sources from where you are getting, and then finally being able to identify them as intended or unintended outcomes. Next slide. Yes, so there are different ways around measuring and documenting your impact, maybe through different visuals, graphs, pie charts, or surveys, or you can do close discussion with the stakeholders. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. So these are the different kinds of presentation that you can do once you have the data at hand. Next slide. Now, when you know you have the KPIs in place, you know what is your positive and intended outcome, you have the data in place, you are in a very well position to show your results. So the next action item is show your results. Next slide. So there are different ways to show your impact, and we are going to share some live examples with you. Live in the sense that they are currently existing in the industry around different business ventures. Sometimes the KPIs are displayed on a particular website. Sometimes it can be with the testimonials from your customers, your stakeholders, a photo gallery, a kind of before and after gallery, the impact documented on your website itself. It can be in the form of a small movie or advertisement or storytelling or a case study. So there are different ways around communicating your impact. You have to identify which is going to be the best one, considering who is your core customers. Like if you are addressing farmers, and you know around the literacy level of the farmers, what kind of a stuff they are going to access, you should be able to communicate your impact in that particular way, considering who is your core customer or the audience. Next slide. So of course, there are then ways to display it through a competitive survey, showing your competitive landscapes, how you are better from the existing competitors, survey of your customers. Then you can show your, of course, your certifications, accreditations, your partners, your awards, your accolades, and different kind of stuff you should be able to show on your website. Next slide. So this is the second part of the Google form. When you will be filling it, when you will be going to the second page of the Google form, you will find questions around showing your results. Next slide. Yeah, now here are some examples from our cohorts only. So Board Charger is one of our company from the first Land Accelerator South Asia cohort. And if you would look at Board Charger's website, they have written their impact in very simple and clear bullet points. They may not have been able to do a deep dive around quoting the actual figures, but yes, they are on the track. So they have put it very simply. Anybody who looks at the website gets an idea around what they are doing to create a positive impact. They have shown through simple pictures, as you can see in the slide, the process that helps in recharging the bore wells. So it can be a simple depiction around your process, your technology, through which you are creating the impact. Next slide.
Oh, I think Kavita, while we're changing slides, I just wanted to tell people about this. So it's, oh, we can still change slides, but all these examples, we have listed the links there. We want you guys to take a look at this as a resource, because these are great examples, some of them which might apply to, some of them which might not. But basically, the most important thing is you don't have to reinvent the wheel. It doesn't have to be hard. You just have to do it in a way that makes sense for your company, which is why we put so many examples here, is so that you can see something and really become a leader in your area about what impact looks for your business, because we really think this makes a big difference. So I just wanted to share why so many examples and how you can use them. You can show this to your team members, to whoever's building your webpage, and really make this something that can work for you. So yeah, let's go on through more examples. Sure.
Thanks, Amanda. So this next example is from a company selling organic products. What I love about them is that they are very much transparent around their pricing. And if you can see, they have shared how the final MRP goes to different dimensions, the total price that you pay, how much of it is going to the impact partner, how much is going to the farmers, and how much actually is going to the enterprise. So this kind of transparency helps the buyer identify to which segments they are actually contributing while they are buying your product. If you say it is eco-friendly product, you are creating sustainable livelihood for the farmers, then they should be able to identify to which segment you are actually contributing to. It is a kind of traceability, that price traceability basically. So you can also think around these kind of innovative ways to show your transparency. Next slide. Yes, this is example of storytelling and impact in a tree-based company. If you are planting trees, this is just one example. Like you can enlist your environmental impact goals on your website. When you have exact numbers in place, you can write about your mitigating climate change, or if you are creating additional forest cover, how much it is, what is the improvement in the soil and water quality. Like we said, if you are increasing the carbon content, what is maybe you can mention in the percentage increase in carbon content in the soil. So there are different ways, and you have to design them as per your business intervention. Next slide. Yes, this is again one of our cohort companies from 2021, Washin Composites. They are creating a value chain where they are using the pine needles, of course, the fallen pine needles in the Himalayan states, and then they are converting them into eco-friendly, broad range of products which are available online. And if you click at this link, which is shared on the slide, you will be able to see that they have shared a story of pine tree, Kahani Pine Ki. And this brief story tells how they have analyzed the problem, how their team goes to the forest, picks up the pine needles, then how they are transported to the factories, what sort of finished products are there, and how they are helping farmers build sustainable livelihood ecosystem in their own Himalayan region. So this is also one of the way of communicating your impact through strong visuals, videos. Next slide. This is again one of our cohort companies from 2021. So we have been showing you like how you should be able to share your impact. A first example was from a tree planting company. Another one was from a value chain development company. Now this one is from an agri-tech company. This is Surya Nirbhar. Ashwini is the female founder of this enterprise, and how they talk about their impact. They say that a little story about us. Then you can see they have identified different verticals and they have shown it through a small flow chart kind of thing. So this is another way. Next slide. Yes, now showing your impact numbers with a map creates a very strong impact. It does two things at one time. First is you are able to see how much numbers you have generated. Second, in which geographies you are there. So it gives an idea immediately to the stakeholders. What are your regions of operation, your geographies of operation, along with the numbers. We have seen most of the times we end up asking the entrepreneurs towards the end of their presentation, what are the core areas in which you are operating? Because we hear the entire presentation and then at the end, we are struggling to find whether this entrepreneur is doing it in Maharashtra or Chhattisgarh or Uttarakhand. And then we ask you to map it on and present it in one of your slides so that people immediately get to know in which geography you are operating. So this is also one of the great ways. Next slide. Yes, this is before and after kind of thing. You can show the picture galleries, baseline, and then to where you have reached in an identified period of time, which is your target. Next slide. Would now like to invite Amanda for taking you through the other slides.
Okay, sure. I mean, these are just more examples as well, so we might not need to spend so much time on this, but this is about education around a specific topic. So some companies here, you know, might be working around a big topic, such this is honey and bees. Like that's a global topic, and a lot of times people just need to know the background of the sector that you're working in. So a lot of times you might see there's an about section on the website or an impact section on the website. And why we're focusing on the website is because if you are looking for investors or partners, these are the kind of people who are going to go onto your website and learn about it. Also, if you're looking at B2B, selling to other businesses, they're going to want to know about your story as well. We don't obviously think everybody's going to read this stuff, but the people who read it are really going to care. So go ahead to the next slide. This is an interesting one. So this is sort of similar to the competition slide that you might have in your deck. And so there might be a time where it's appropriate to put that on your webpage. So for instance, this is talking about an organic and safe way to kill fleas, which, you know, pest control is something that a few people in this cohort will be working on. And you can see how they compare the efficacy here between the different products that are there. Then that's how many fleas are dead over a certain amount of time or something like that. So people might think, well, your formula doesn't work, it's just organic. Well, if you have the data for it, you can prove them wrong. So disarming objections. So again, this is something that we talked about with I believe it was Rohit's company, which at first people think is just about cutting down trees. You have to disarm the objections ahead of time. Maybe it's through a story, or maybe it's through data points to say, no, when people know the value of the trees, they're more likely to bring trees onto their forests and participate in agroforestry systems, which has these benefits. So go ahead to the next slide. Here, we're looking at product brochures. So this is an example of a product brochure. Again, check it out when you're there, but this might be useful for you maybe if you have an organic agricultural input or something where you can really lay out the benefits. You can really lay out, hey, this is how it works and here's how you use it. So product brochures can be a really great way to show your impact in like a guide sort of format. So go ahead. And you might like the way this one looks. You might use it to update yours. This is fun, video tour. So to try and make things more interactive. So maybe if you have a farm or something, you want to really try and make it fun and be lively. And so this is a landing page on a website about chocolate. And you can see they have 2 different site visit videos. And you see, it doesn't have to be all 100% VR, really tough to do. They have a picture, you know, that was taken from the air of their land. And then they have 2 videos that are linked to it, but it just starts to show a place of where you are and gets people excited about the work you're doing in the community. So if you have a farm, that might be an interesting one to go for. Go ahead and next. This is one that Kavita might be more familiar with. Would you like to share it, Kavita?
Yes. Thanks, Amanda. And now I would like to show you how one of the leading agribusiness conglomerates of the country, ITC Limited, which has been pioneer in initiating sustainable agribusiness interventions in Indian ecosystem, showcase their impact. Like 4 million farmers benefited by e-Chopal. Then 25 FMCG mother brands, 6 million sustainable livelihoods, 20 years of water positive, 17 years of carbon positive, 42% of total energy is renewable, and 38 platinum rated green buildings. I know most of you are focused at developing green enterprises. Some of you are also utilizing green energy sources. But if you are not able to document it, measure it, and show it to the intended users or the stakeholders, it is going waste. So this is one great example how big companies try to showcase it very clearly and help the customers gain this transparency around their business proposition. Next slide. Yes, if you go to their sustainability segment, they have very clearly identified segments like afforestation, watershed management, renewable energy. So this one I'm quoting from the afforestation section. So how they caption it, like ITC's afforestation program, greening more than so many acres. So they are showcasing their vision with certain numbers that they have already captured or they are trying to capture. So these are some of the examples which are existing on date and the bigger companies are using them. So why not to adopt these best practices from the industry and start building them into your ventures from the early stage. Next slide. Yes, so next ITC have showcased strategies and key interventions. Like if you know what are your intended outcomes and what are your KPIs, so what are your strategies to build upon your positive outcome? You can also showcase them on your website and you can quote the examples, successful case studies, if you have testimonials and field videos. If you say that my product is able to decompose the waste in 15 days and then the farmer is able to sow the next crop in next 20 days and it is able to reduce so much of stubble burning, then there should be evidence around these statements on your website. If you can share it, it will help in gaining you a lot in terms of creating transparency and building credibility in the ecosystem. Next slide. So these are just examples like how people have posted the PDF of their case studies, successful case studies This is again on ITC's website, impact studies. So if the bigger companies that are already established have a established brand in the ecosystem, they are doing so much efforts to make the audiences and the stakeholders aware around what they are doing. It is, I think, imperative for the early stage ventures to just imbibe these best practices. And if you have been able to document any of your successful case studies, your protocols, any interventions, then do create a section on your website and post it online. Next slide. So now we have come to the part 3 of this session today, which is the last one. And when you are going to click on your Google Forms and you are able to submit 2 pages of it, you will go to the last page, which will talk about this section. So now once you know what is impact, how you are going to identify your outcomes, how you are going to define your KPIs, you have a suggestive template also with you. What are the 3 steps will you take to improve your impact reporting this week? So we are going to discuss this question once we open up for the discussion round. But at least you should be able to identify 3 steps from this session that now you would commit yourself to do regarding your impact reporting. Next slide. Yes. So what are the 3 steps? So what are the top 1 to 2 aspects that are going to worry you after this presentation? So please feel free to share your experience, your comments, your suggestions once we finish this presentation, and the areas you might like to explore around impact assessment with your mentors, and how you would like to showcase it in your upcoming mock pitching rounds. We would love to see the final slides while you are pitching on the demo day actually. And then additional and optional comments. So do please fill up the Google form and share with us. Next slide. Yeah, now we are going to show some high quality examples, and maybe both me and Amanda would take you through these slides. Next one. Amanda, would you like to take up this?
Oh, sure. Yes. So I think this is a great time for people to continue to fill out that form, because so keep us on in the background. If you filled it out already, keep it here. We're going to discuss a few seconds after this, but fill out the form, because there's nothing like the present. And as soon as you fill it out and press submit, I believe you will get a PDF attachment to your email. So that will be your gift from yourself to yourself today, is something that you can refer back to and share with your team. So this is interesting, and it's kind of like what we call an explainer article. So again, similar to, if you are working in a big sector or a sector that people might not understand very well, or they think it's greenwashing. So for instance, here I'm looking at bamboo, because maybe people hear about bamboo all the time and they're like, oh, bamboo, I hear about it all the time. How can it really be so good? What's good about it? You might want to educate people about the background of the sector you're working in. So this is a great way to see how you can do that by creating an article that people might want to read, some sort of a blog post. You can also look at getting that published in different partner organizations or what do you call that? Media outlets. So that's just another idea. And next. This is from our company who has participated in the 2020 Land Accelerator, Gratitude Farms. And so we're really excited about these KPIs that he's put here. So he's just sharing a little bit about what an acre of his land looks like, which might be something that you can do as well. 100 trees per acre, 10,000 vegetables over the year, and it just starts to share with you a little bit about what's going on there. Something else that might be interesting is if he also wanted to, maybe somewhere else on his website, talk about what a traditional farm looks like, what happens to the biomass on a regular farm, what kind of income comes from his farm versus a regular farm. I think those would be interesting comparisons as well. Kavita?
And Amanda, if you allow me to come in. So this slide also tells about the composition and impact of a food forest model. Like those who don't know what is a food forest model, if someone is randomly looking at this slide, they get to know that there are fruit trees, there are vegetable, there are greens and herbs together in a food forest model. And what impact it is creating, that it is adding so much of biomass to enrich the vermicompost. So it is giving idea to anybody who doesn't know what is a food forest model and how it is adding to the fertility of the soil. So two things are quickly coming over this slide, and Gratitude Farms is quickly gearing up, and it is an early stage company. They have been able to raise debt funding from Samunnati Financials. So this is just an example how when you start scaling up and you have numbers around your business, you should start sharing it on your website. So next slide. Yes. Over to you, Amanda.
Oh, I included this one time because we were working with a company that had furniture. So this is about a furniture storytelling, but it might work with anybody who has a product as well. So you can just check that out. If you have a product that you're making perhaps out of sustainably sourced materials, you can start to see maybe an example of how this company has done it, and you might find it compelling for you. So we, again, go to the next slide, sure. We might want to just encourage everybody to browse through these, see what examples apply to you, and see what kind, if you want to try one or two of the ideas out yourself. We want to thank you. And I don't know if we have any more slides than that, or if we're opening for Q&A.
We are opening up for Q&A now.
Perfect. So maybe we can see the question, which is maybe we can ask anybody in the group to share what they've done so far, maybe an example of impact reporting or impact monitoring that they've done so far. Maybe have they been able to integrate this impact storytelling anywhere in their communications, or in their, in their communications with partners or customers. So just interested to hear if anybody has a story to tell about their impact and how that might have helped their business actually gain more business and grow. If there's any stories around that. And of course, at the same time, if anybody has specific questions too, also feel free to chime in or raise your hand, either one. I know it can sometimes be a little bit to get the first conversation started. That's super normal for just about every single webinar, but then people really start going after a while. So anybody want to share any kind of comments on impact reporting they might have done? I see Leela turning on the camera, so I think I will open the mic for Leela.
Hi everyone. We just like to share our story of Good Food Village Community Farms. When we initially started our corporation and we wanted to get into manage community farms, the objective was to bring a social impact to the farmers. But as a private limited company, we didn't have so much of resources to create an impact for a long time. So our idea was to pull in the urban resources so that we can create some impact in the rural economy. Afforestation was the main objective, but who will invest for that? So we just floated the concept with a couple of urban friends. Would you like to own a farm? Then they gave us a couple of questions saying that, hey, I'm sitting in Chennai, I would like to own it if it is very nearby. So that's about 100 kilometers, a weekend drive, spend the day there. Then they also said, who will manage my farm, and how will I get farmers to, how will I get a watchman, and who will manage my farm? We said that if there is a company willing to do a management of your farm, would you like to own it? Why not? And their objective was to own 2 acres, and they had a big budget. Similar way, we tried to survey around 5 to 6 people, and we got a very positive response. And we also asked them, why do you want to own such farm? They said that anyway it is land, it's going to be appreciated. It's a land, the investment is going to appreciate because it's a huge investment to purchase a couple of acres of land. Then they said that you're going to do organic farming, that is natural farming. So definitely the yields are going to be chemical free. pesticide free and good for us to consume whenever we can pick it up from there. Then it's also a getaway location for us during the weekends. With that support, around 6 members support, we started with a community farm. And we identified a barren land, and it is about 100 kilometers from Chennai. And we identified around 25 acres owned by farmer groups of farmer families. Close to 15 farmer families were owning that 25 acres. And they were literally not cultivating that land for 2 decades due to lack of resources. And I mean, we should say that their average monthly income was close to 5,000 to 7,000. Each family was present there, and no one was buying their land. Also, it is left unused, barren. So we approached them saying that we want to procure it for our urban community, and they'll be getting the land cost, and we will, as a company, will charge the development cost and the farming cost because it's totally barren. And we started the approach. We provide after bridging the land sale directly to the owners. They had some money, I mean, very good, decent money to start their own ventures. Some started tea shops, some started textile. So that way we triggered a rural economy by sharing the urban economy and not just procuring the produce. It's participating in agroforestry and converting the barren land to a productive food forest. This has been a very good move, but it's very time consuming. And as a private limited company, we were working on a lean model. We didn't have adequate resources. So our profitability was hit. Then the same model, what we did, instead of investing, there are many HNIs who own 5 to 10 acres of land, but maintenance was an issue. Finding the right workers or somebody to do a complete turnkey solution was an issue. So there also we just went and proposing that we will do the turnkey solution of converting this barren land into food forest, and later you appoint a couple of people to maintain the farm, and who are all very professional, well settled HNIs. They said, okay, fine. What is the cost per acre? And if it's a 5 acre, 10 acre, it's a prestige issue for them to own a farm. Though the farm is available with them, they were not taking an effort to bring into productive use. So we undertook that farming as a service, extended to these urban individuals to convert their farmland.
So yeah, we can see the importance, right, of telling the right kind of story and connecting with them. And I think that's an important thing is, you know, you might have done it personally, but maybe you've updated your marketing materials, your website to reflect that, you know, you are going to have an agroforestry, an organic agroforestry, because, you know, right, how much better is that for the prestige than, oh, you know, I have a regular farm and we use chemicals and stuff. No, my farm is organic. My farm is making a difference. And I think that's what your customers actually like. And I think that's an example of seeing certain customers willing to pay more for that story, but also for the facts and the impact.
So without relying on any external funding or bank support, we were trying to reach a stage of 40 acres of community farm size, and individuals who are HNIs, they converted close to 25 to 30 acres. That is each one holding 5 to 7 acres. They have converted their barren land into a full-fledged farm. So now it's their farm, but there are issues because the laborers do not stay there forever and the crop cycle gets damaged. So they also want us to take that responsibility of providing the periodic maintenance. So these are all the learnings out of this 4-year cycle. And now we are designing a scalable solution so that both the urban community and the rural farmer community, they can be benefited through rural employment and in terms of daily wage jobs, as well as fixed man months of work, and also a physical market to showcase the produce.
And Leila, we have an example for you that we didn't include there, but this company also acting in India, and I wouldn't consider them competitors. And I think a lot of people sometimes don't consider competitors. I put the link beforest.co. because there's so much land that needs to be restored. And you can see if it's dissimilar or different to your model, but I'm sure if it's similar enough, then you can even reach out to them and say, hey, can we have a talk about what you're doing? Because these gentlemen, I think they're mostly men who are working on this company, are really trying to get land restoration going on. So they'd probably be very happy to hear that you're doing this as well.
One another thing is, so we are working in rural environment and with a farmer community. There are a lot of cultural issues and transport and convenience. At this cost, we need to operate there. So it is very difficult to operate across multiple cities and multiple towns unless we have adequate resources and capital. So that way, Gratitude Farms has got a very different model and a very good strategic approach. They have scaled it up very well. And ours, my harvest farms are also, they do an excellent job of delivering the organic produce directly to the consumers.
Sure,
So we have not gone to the
Leila,
home delivery.
maybe you can put your website in the chat box for everybody. And I might want to see, we only have 15 more minutes left. So I might want to visit Prasanna's comment. Prasanna, not sure if you're available and able to unmute yourself, but in the meantime, go for it. And I'll read your comment to everybody and hopefully we can have a discussion with you. Prasanna says, we actually have a story, but didn't share it to understand the importance. So maybe it was saying you didn't know how to share it, maybe didn't understand the importance of sharing it. I wonder, Prasanna, if you would be able to share any points around that. We're gonna see if you can unmute yourself, not sure. And everybody, please take a look at Leila's website, goodfoodvillage.org, and you can see some of the models that she was talking about there. And of course, people are thinking about forming partnerships, and we are 100% supportive of that. And perhaps later we can put in, once again, in case you haven't had a chance, the top 15 cohort contact information, so you can reach out to people anytime you want within this program. Kavita, back to you.
Amanda, I was just letting you know that we should also ask what are the key one or two takeaways from this session, which is the last part of the Google form. Maybe everyone should be able to share at least one takeaway from this session. So guys, would someone like to volunteer? Yes, I can see Hardik have shown up. Yes, Hardik, please go ahead.
Yeah, hi Kavita. So really sorry, my video is not because I'm in a car and it's dark here.
No worries.
For the takeaway, so before takeaway, as Amanda asked that, just to share my experience regarding documenting our impact. So we started beekeeping for some years, and definitely the beekeeping is about dealing with bees and selling bee products. But over a period of time, we could not realize that how we can show our impact. So we did not have any technology or any standard format available. So what we have done is that we have just sit with farmers, and we also just calculated that, okay, fine, over the last 3 to 4 years, how many bee colonies that we have dealt with and how many areas that we have covered. And we are very much aware that the areas where we have deployed our bee colonies, where our bees has actually foraged and took nectars and pollens from there, definitely those area would have been pollinated. So now whenever we present ourselves, we say, okay, fine, we have cross-pollinated, or we have supported in cross-pollination of that area. So that is how we have started taking the impact. Obviously, it is not as sophisticated figures as it should be, but as Kavita, you just asked that what are the takeaways? So takeaways that at least we need to start. I mean, in that example, when Amanda said that, okay, fine, a person, the chocolate person website is showing the farm and nursery. It is not very sophisticated technology, like they are not showing in AR or something. It is as simple as possible, but we have to just initiate the process. So that is the takeaway, and that is what I wanted to share here.
Thank you so much, Hardik. And please also try to come down to the matrix if possible by the end of this year.
Thanks so much for sharing that. Yes, looking for anybody else who'd
We
like
have
to share
so
anything,
many,
but just
we have so many of you over here. Any one takeaway from everyone, maybe?
we see Kanchan.
Kanchan.
Go ahead.
Kanchan, you are on mute.
So I think, the similar takeaway I got in my discussion during our mentorship call. So Amanda suggested that, if we have this story where even you're working with a lot of farmers and, giving back to society in terms of educating them in, a new technique of farming, and we're doing a lot of plantation of herbal plants and trees as well. So we incorporated that in a slide in pitch deck. So this is one suggestion came from Amanda. For today, again, looking at the examples, all the previous cohort companies, the website like the Composite, the work they're doing, and how we should showcase the good work we are doing for the society and for our environment. So this is biggest takeaway for me from today's discussion is you should be able to present the work you're doing, and in a proper measure the proper KPIs, so which we are not doing as of now, but then we'll start doing it. So as I mentioned in my Google form also, so measuring the KPI and showcasing the impact that we are doing.
I wanted to
Thanks,
add the same, Amanda and Kavita. So the KPIs are very helpful because I was looking forward to the session after the mentor call. And you clearly put it into 4 buckets, right? The environmental, socioeconomic, financial, and business process. And the Google form was more like a roadmap for us, like a way for us to go next. So I've attended few other sessions on impact metrics, but I think today there was more like a guideline for us on how to approach it in a more structured manner. So I think if I put some more time after this session to sit down, fill up that Google form, I'll open up a lot more better, and I really appreciate that.
Thanks, Archana. And please do look at the template also.
Yeah, and this is something that we can definitely continue on with the mentors as well.
Yeah.
I think all of our internal mentors are really well versed on impact, and it's something that we can discuss with you during our internal mentorship sessions this, let's see, September and October. We see Amlan.
Oh, yeah, it was about that takeaway. I mean, the honest reaction of mine is that my website is absolutely rubbish. And I really, this is my realization after today's session. Thank you guys very much, but very honestly, it will be very difficult for me to work on it next week or this month. I'm taking honestly 3 months time, but yeah, it was all crap, and I understand. I really have to, I wish that I had this session earlier.
Well, so, about the timeline, I know everybody's so busy, but if you have a few ideas of things you want to do, you can at least put it on the to-do lists, and then you remember and come back to it. So yes. Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Amlan. So we have 10 more minutes. Guys, hope you don't mind if we make it a fun-filled activity. Like I can go on the screen by names from left to right, and we can make it a rapid fire kind of round, and everyone just quickly shares what is their one key takeaway. So I can see first line is already covered, first row. Second one, I can go to Rohit from Lakadwala.
I like the environmental parameter, this carbon sequestration. So definitely I would like to put it on my website.
Great, thanks, Rohit. Next we have Rahul. Rahul from Aquesta.
Yeah, so one thing that stood out for me, and we don't have that, and I was thinking about it earlier, is to have a comparison with your competitors. So in our website, we have quite an elaborate website so far. We were at a stage where we were like Amlan, but we've learned from different sources, and we have built up our website. But I think it's important to also show what your competitors are doing and how you can do it better, how you are doing better than them, or you're providing something that's unique. So I think that comparison is very important.
Thank you, Rahul. Next, I can see Mr. KD Sharma.
Hello. So for us, the takeaway, because we are working on restoration of degraded lands, and which are like, lands degraded by erosion or by mining and other human activities, like by chemicals dumped into land or landfills. So for us, the takeaway is to show a metric how the land is again being rejuvenated and what is the metric for it for soil carbon and soil health. Because people, they work more about the fertility of soil, but soil carbon actually it is changes. It is like a little bit long term. It takes time to build soil carbon, minimum 3 to 5 years, and that's where you start getting your organic. If you're doing organic farming, then that's how the inputs, the value starts coming. Because it takes 3 years for the land to become carbon positive and free from all contamination.
That's great. Thank you so much. Next, I can see Prasanna from Vena.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Actually, the most, as Amlam says, right, we need to work on our website very much, and these points are well taken, and definitely we'll be doing it. We are also into biochar, that is carbon sequestration. So we will have to tell a story to the world what exactly we are doing. We have some results with us. It's all scattered here and there onto the website, but I think we need to now work on that, and we have to have a story to tell, a good story to tell.
Great. Just one reminder, whatever KPI or parameter you are selecting, you should be very quick and well versed around the 5 core dimensions like what, who, how much, contribution, and risk. Whenever you are talking to anyone, these 5 core dimensions of your impact parameter should be on your tips, and you'll be able to nail it. Next, I can see Devasya from Thapasu Foods.
So my main takeaway from this webinar is that the KPI thing, which is obviously there, and I mean the importance of it. So because I feel that, I mean, like you had mentioned in your mentioned during your speech that I mean, even if we put our numbers, it somehow feels inadequate in some of the other ways. So if we put trajectories, if we weigh these down using the KPIs that we have identified, so it can actually give support to our proposition to whoever we are explaining to. So that's the thing I take away from this session. And apart from that, I mean, there are some elements in our website which had been mentioned here. I mean, they're like the storytelling part, which is there in our website. But the thing is that it has to be improved upon, and it has to be made more adequate. So we have to work upon that. And about the KPIs, we have to rather work upon them as well. So that's the thing. That's the main things that I took from this session.
Thank you so much, Devasya. Next, I can see Riddhish from Onset. Riddhish, are you there? Okay, we can go to,
yes.
Yeah, Riddhish is there.
So, yeah, we in onset actually we use non-invasive techniques for. So for us actually the KPI would be like, how the water we are able to recharge and how we are able to overall come from the macro and micro water rejuvenation and how it is helping the overall ecosystem. So we are very similar to Berry Flow, but a little bit different because we are also providing farm ponds and other solutions like that. Thank you.
Okay. So what's your takeaway?
So our takeaway would be like, how much of the groundwater scenario is changing by applying the targeting solution that we have. And at the same time, how much we are like able to help the sustainability of the hydrological cycle. Because
Thank you
in
so much.
India has been the largest groundwater depleting. We deplete a lot, even more than US and China together. That's
Okay, that's good to know. Next we can go to Rupali from Konku One Hubs.
So, we'll be working on basically showcasing a few indicators, and one is definitely the social impact part, the geography where we are working, the socio-economic profile, and the other thing is the income enhancement, the shift they are making in the incomes, and definitely adding few case studies to our, I mean, in the website part also, in the pitch part, deck part also. Yeah, thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Rupali. Next we have Devika.
Hi. The main key takeaway of today is actually on website development. Actually, we are basically doing drone services. Through that, we are saving more CO2 and we are saving nature by using that. So we should include more details, environmental side details in our website.
Okay, thanks, Devika.
And Devika, what city is your company based out of? Maybe a few people here.
Actually,
Devika, I wanted to have a comment. Sorry, I was muting myself on an accident. What city are your drone services based out of? Maybe someone here would be interested in the services for their farms and forests.
Okay, we are basically doing sales and sales and spraying services of drones. Now we are focusing on India, majorly in South India.
South India.
We are planning for expansion in near future to other countries like UK, Canada, and Australia, and we have a discussion on going for that actually.
Okay,
So,
great.
Devika, if you can show this on a map on your website and the current existing customers and what are your projections or a forecast, so that would help the audiences a lot. Like Amanda had to ask in which geography you are operating. So if it is clearly visible on your website, it will be good.
Yeah, sure. Now we are working on our website actually. Now it's actually we started our company 2 years back. The website is updating now based on the current details.
Thanks, Devika.
Thank you so much.
Next we have Ravinder.
Yeah, hi Kavita. Regarding the today's takeaway, actually what we can realize is that I have actually identified the KPIs for ourselves in terms of there are 3 KPIs we are actually working in. First is soil conservation. Second is the community income enhancement, basically community work, and third is the financials for actually improving the condition of the income of the community. So we have started working in Chhattisgarh, and actually I'm sitting in Chhattisgarh itself right now. So we have identified that the tribals who are actually growing millets are the one who is topographically aligned towards millets only, because they don't use any fertilizers, and the land is undulating, which is why they're not actually growing any other crop in that, and it's purely organic farming which they're doing it. So if we can actually support them, then they would actually enhance the area of that organic farming and millets to them, which will not only increase their income but also save the soils from actually getting destroyed with the chemicals. So yeah, I can actually identify the KPIs now we need to work in and show it to the world in terms of our website and other representation also. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ravinder. So now we are almost done, and since me and Amanda, we have already talked a lot in this session, so would like to pass on to our other team members, Suhail and Hari, who are here, if they have any suggestions or closing remarks or comments.
This Suhelia, I don't have any comments, but what I could see is the entire cohort has been more structured and more organized and more thoughtful after this session, which is absolutely critical to grow. That's my view, and it has already had an impact in between this session. In between the session, I'm sure it will have a bigger impact when they apply and sit and brainstorm with their team. Thanks.
Thanks, Suhail. Fabiana, would you like to show up for any closing remarks?
No particular closing remarks, but I look forward to seeing some of the action taken on some of the pitch decks moving forward as you perhaps implement some of these edits.
I think this sounds great. Maybe we can invite everybody who wants to turn on their camera or to say a group goodbye. We're gonna have another session next week at the same time, well, at 6 o'clock, I believe, correct?
So next week, we are not having a session. It's a public holiday in India. It's Ganesh Chaturthi, and we are doing the next session in the first week of September. It is 7th of September. So we will be informing you before time, and thank you everyone for joining us. And we are happy to announce that we'll be finishing the mentorship calls this Friday, and then we will be announcing the external as well as internal mentors to all of you, the top 15. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a nice day.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.